It's known as the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet, an artifact made of clay with an engraved fragment of the Epic of Gilgamesh.
There is a gate carved into a 5,000-year-old clay tablet, and the things guarding it are not human. From the waist up, they are men. From the waist down, they are scorpion. Their heads touch the sky. Their gaze is described as death. They stand in front of a tunnel that the sun god uses every night, and the text says any human who walks into it will be incinerated before he reaches the other side. Museums have the carvings, scholars have the translation, and in 5,000 years, nobody has been willing to say out loud what these things actually were.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, for people who don't know, is one of the oldest versions of a lot of the stories that you hear in the Bible. Very similar to them. There always seems to be a great flood. There's a few heroes. There's angry gods. There's a bunch of stuff going on.
There is a gate carved into a 5,000-year-old clay tablet, and the things guarding it are not human. From the waist up, they are men. From the waist down, they are scorpion. Their heads touch the sky. Their gaze is described as death. They stand in front of a tunnel that the sun god uses every night, and the text says any human who walks into it will be incinerated before he reaches the other side. Museums have the carvings, scholars have the translation, and in 5,000 years, nobody has been willing to say out loud what these things actually were.
In the Utnapishtim story, the beings that spoke to him and warned him about this spoke through the walls of his house, and his house then became the craft that was used to evacuate.
The tablet nobody reads. Everyone has heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Almost nobody has actually read Tablet 9, and I am not saying that as a criticism. The epic is long, the translations are dense and academic. Most people only encounter it through summaries, and those summaries focus on the same three things every single time. The flood story, the friendship with Enkidu, the search for immortality. Those are the famous parts. Those are the parts that show up in documentaries and get repeated on every podcast you have ever listened to.
These people left behind such detailed records and information. It's a time capsule of information on stone tablets for us today to be able to decipher, break down, and understand, and that's what we're here to do now.
Tablet 9 contains something I have never seen discussed anywhere. Not in any documentary, not in any podcast or alternative history treatment of this material I have ever come across. And when I sat down and read it carefully, not the summary, the actual text, I found a description so specific and so strange that I spent days trying to find a reasonable explanation. I did not find one, and the more I looked, the worse it got. The translation I am working from is the one most academics use. Andrew George, Professor Emeritus of Babylonian at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, spent from 1985 to 2001 traveling between museums in Baghdad, Berlin, London, and Philadelphia, gathering every cuneiform fragment of the poem he could lay his hands on. His 2003 critical edition for Oxford University Press draws on 218 separate manuscripts. He is the closest thing the modern world has to a person who has actually read this text. And in his commentary on Tablet 9, he describes the geography it lays out as having a precision that does not behave the way mythological geography is supposed to behave. The measurements line up, the directional logic holds. The text reads, in his words, like something the scribe believed. Here is what it actually describes. Gilgamesh has just left the city of Uruk. Enkidu is dead. He is wearing animal skins. He is wandering the wilderness in mourning, and for the first time in his life, he is facing the reality of his own death. He decides to do something no one has ever done. He is going to find Utnapishtim, the only mortal ever granted eternal life by the gods, and ask him for the secret. The journey to Utnapishtim requires passing through one specific place, a twin-peaked mountain. Its name is Mashu, and the function of Mashu, according to the text, is something you need to hear in plain language before we go any further.
One of them shall die, and the one that shall die shall be Enkidu. And so Enkidu falls sick, and after a long illness, in which he is partly raving and having dreams of the netherworld, he dies.
The mountain that swallows the sun, Mashu guards the rising and the setting of the sun. That is its job. That is the literal function the text gives it, not a poetic flourish, a specific structural role. The sun enters Mashu from the western peak every evening. The sun exits from the eastern peak every morning. And inside the mountain, between those two peaks, there is a tunnel, a passage, a path that the sun god Shamash travels every single night to return from where he sets in the west to where he rises in the east. The sun goes underground, travels through Mashu, and comes out the other side, every night, without fail. That is the geography the text is laying out. And that geography is what Gilgamesh has decided to walk into. He arrives at the entrance of this tunnel and finds it guarded. The beings standing at the gate are not described vaguely. They are described with the kind of specificity that makes you stop reading and check the translation twice. From the waist up, they are human. From the waist down, they are scorpion. Their heads touch the sky. Their lower parts, the scorpion portions, reach down into the underworld. Their aura is terrifying. Their gaze is death. And here is the part nobody talks about. These scorpion men are not a literary invention. They are not something the poet made up to add atmosphere.
Why do they have pictures of giant, enormous people-looking things with like a humanoid with a tail sitting on their lap? Like, what is this? Just fiction?
Yeah.
Like, why would they detail this?
They appear in Akkadian cylinder seals that are photographed and cataloged and sitting in museum collections. The British Museum has them. The Louvre has them. Multiple seals show them flanking the gates of Shamash, the sun god, in exactly the configuration the text describes. Two of them, one on each side, holding the gates open as the sun emerges between them. It was a documented iconographic tradition repeated across centuries by artisans who lived hundreds of miles apart and never met one another. These beings were a known feature of the Mesopotamian world long before the Epic of Gilgamesh was ever written down. The text is not introducing them. The text is referencing something the audience already recognized. So now we have a real artistic tradition, a real text, and a 5,000-year-old gate that the text says is guarded by them, leading into a tunnel no human has ever walked through and survived. Before we go through that gate with Gilgamesh, I have to ask you something. If you are still with me at this point, you are clearly the kind of person who actually cares about this stuff. Most viewers click away the second the word tablet shows up. You did not. So drop a comment below telling me which mountain range you think Mashu actually is. Taurus, Zagros, somewhere else entirely. I read every comment, and your guesses genuinely shape what I research next. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit subscribe right now, because what is on the other side of that gate is the part that has genuinely been keeping me up at night. Because the conversation that happens at the threshold is even stranger than the gate itself. The Guardian's warning. The Scorpion Man looks at Gilgamesh and turns to his wife. Notice the domesticity of that detail. These are not faceless monsters. These are guardians with families discussing the arrival of a visitor before deciding what to do with him. And what the Scorpion Man says about Gilgamesh is one of the strangest lines in the entire epic. He says the one who has come to them, his body is the flesh of gods. The Scorpion Man recognizes immediately on sight that Gilgamesh is not an ordinary human. There is something visible in his physical form that marks him as different. 2/3 god, 1/3 man, as the epic tells us elsewhere, and the Guardian sees it instantly. Gilgamesh tells them his purpose. He is going to find Utnapishtim. He needs to pass through the tunnel, and the Scorpion Man does not refuse. He warns him. He tells him the truth directly, the way someone tells you the truth when they know you are not going to listen.
Utnapishtim tells this story to Gilgamesh and says, I'm immortal because the gods didn't know what to do after that with me, so they put me on this island far away and gave me immortality like them, but that's not going to happen for you. You can't become immortal as I have.
No man has ever done this. No one has walked through the darkness of the mountain. The passage is 12 double hours of darkness, thick darkness, no light forward, no light backward. At the rising of Shamash, he shines, but the sun of the setting shines not. You need to understand what 12 double hours actually means. In the Sumerian time system, one double hour, called a beru, is roughly 2 of our modern hours. 12 double hours is 24 hours, a full day. A full day of continuous walking in complete darkness through a tunnel that the sun god uses every night, and that will burn you alive if it catches you inside. No food breaks, no rest, no torches, because the text is explicit that there is no light of any kind in there. The Scorpion Man warns him he will be in darkness when he leaves and in darkness when he arrives. There will be no light at any point along the way. And then, after all the warnings, he steps aside. What happens next is, in my opinion, the most precise description of an underground journey in any piece of ancient literature. And that precision is the key to everything. 12 hours of measured darkness. At the first double hour, the darkness is dense. There is no light forward or backward. At the second double hour, the darkness is dense. He cannot see. At the third, at the fourth, at the fifth. The repetition is not poetic laziness. It is structural. It is deliberate. The text is measuring out the darkness in precise units, marking each double hour as Gilgamesh advances, and the darkness does not change, and the silence does not break. This is not a poetic rendering of fear or confusion. This is a documented progression through a measurable space. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. The text ticks them off, the way you would tick off the mile markers on a long highway. At the 9th double hour, the north wind is blowing on his face. Stop and consider that detail. There is moving air inside. This passage, air moving in a specific direction. The text noticed it and recorded it. Picture what that walk actually looks like. He cannot see his own hands. He cannot see the walls beside him or the floor under his feet. He is putting one foot in front of the other in absolute black, hour after hour. And the only thing he knows for certain is that something is coming up behind him, and if he stops, it catches him. There is wind on his face from a direction he cannot see. There is no sound except his own breathing. There is no measure of distance except the count of hours, and the hours are not slowing down. At the 11th double hour, dawn is breaking. He can see something ahead. At the 12th double hour, the light appears, and he has emerged just before Shamash, the sun, would have overtaken him. The timing matters. The text is specific that he barely made it. If the sun had caught him inside that tunnel, he would have been incinerated. He emerged into light at the very last possible moment. And what was waiting for him on the other side was not a normal landscape. It was a garden where the trees did not bear fruit. The trees bore jewels, carnelian, lapis lazuli, agate, rubies. A garden at the edge of the sea, where the light was unlike anything he had seen before, where the world was visibly different from the world he had left behind. A threshold place, the boundary between the known world and whatever lay on the other side of it. Now, here is where I have to push back on something. Hard. Why the metaphor reading does not work. The standard scholarly treatment of this passage is that the tunnel is a literary metaphor. Gilgamesh's passage through the darkness of Mashu is read as a symbolic journey through death and rebirth. The hero descends into darkness and emerges into light. It is a narrative pattern that appears across world mythology, and it is interpreted as a symbolic representation of transformation.
In the original Epic of Gilgamesh, could be describing a Stargate portal that used this type of hyperdimensional geometry as a way to ensure that Utnapishtim and all the animals and the people that he saved wouldn't be here on Earth at all.
The specific time measurement, the precise doubling of hours, the warning about the sun catching him, all of it is dismissed as dramatic flourish, atmosphere, storytelling, a literary frame for an internal psychological process. That is the consensus reading. That is what every undergraduate is told the first time they encounter this passage. Here's my problem with that reading, and it is a problem the consensus does not even attempt to address. The Sumerians and Babylonians who produced and preserved this text used the beru, the double hour, as a standard unit of measurement, not in poetry, in their actual administrative records. It appears on grain delivery tablets. It appears in their astronomical calculations. It appears on the Venus tablets, where they recorded the rising and setting of planets with obsessive precision. The beru was a practical unit, used by a civilization that was ruthlessly precise about practical matters. And the Epic of Gilgamesh uses that same unit to describe other journeys in the text, journeys that scholars accept as describing real geography. The cedar forest, identified by most scholars with the forests of Lebanon, walked to, mapped, treated as real. The waters of death, a specific body of water with specific properties, requiring a specific ferryman to cross, treated as real. Utnapishtim's island, a specific location at the end of the world that Gilgamesh travels to and returns from, treated as real. So, Why is only the tunnel metaphorical? Why does the same precise measurement vocabulary that describes the journey to Lebanon suddenly become a literary device the moment it describes the tunnel through Mashu? The text applies the same standard of geographical and temporal description to all of these locations. The decision to read the tunnel as metaphor while reading the cedar forest as real is not a conclusion derived from the evidence. It is a prior commitment applied to the evidence. What would it actually mean to read the tunnel the way the text describes it? A passage running east to west through a mountain, long enough to require 24 hours of continuous walking, dark enough that no light penetrates at any point along its length, used regularly by something that produces enough heat and light to kill a person if it overtook them inside. An underground passage on a geological scale, not a cave, not a tunnel in the architectural sense. Something that runs through the earth across a significant horizontal distance. The mountain range that scholars most commonly identify with Mashu based on the text's geography is the range that separates Mesopotamia from the Anatolian plateau to the north, either the Taurus or the Zagros, depending on which reading you follow. Both are real mountain ranges, both have real geological complexity, and neither has ever been investigated for the kind of feature the text describes, because the prior commitment to a metaphorical reading means that investigation has never even been proposed. And if the Mesopotamian description was the only one of its kind in the world, you could maybe still hold the metaphor reading together. You could maybe still call it a coincidence of literary structure. It is not the only one. 4 cultures, 1 feature. Start with Egypt. The sun god Ra travels every night through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, in a solar bark. The Duat is described as an underground realm with 12 gates, guarded by serpentine beings, through which Ra passes in darkness, and from which he emerges every morning to rise in the east. 12 gates, 12 hours of night. Hybrid guardians. A sun god moving through a tunnel beneath the earth from west to east. The match with the Mesopotamian description is not approximate, it is precise. Different culture, different language, same architecture. That alone should be uncomfortable. Now, go north. In Norse mythology, Bifrost, the bridge connecting the worlds, is guarded by Heimdall, a being of hybrid nature whose senses extend across the cosmos. He can hear grass growing. He can see for hundreds of miles. The Rainbow Bridge has been read in some scholarly traditions not as a symbol, but as a physical feature of the world's geography. The guardian at the threshold, the passage between worlds, all of it present, in a culture that had no documented contact with either Mesopotamia or Egypt at the time the Eddas were composed. That is 2. Now, go east. In Hindu cosmological tradition, the underworld realm of Patala is described as a network of underground passages and chambers of enormous extent, inhabited by hybrid beings. The Naga, half human and half serpent, connected to the surface world through specific access points that only certain beings can navigate. Hybrid guardians, underground passages, a system of tunnels beneath the earth with gatekeepers who decide who may enter. That is 3. And then there is the Hopi. The Hopi tradition does not place this story in mythic time. The Hopi tradition places it in the actual ground. The Sipapu is the opening through which the ancestors emerge from the underworld into this current world. A physical tunnel in the earth, connecting below to above, the passage point of human origin. And it is still located, by Hopi tradition, in the Grand Canyon. They will tell you where it is. They have ceremonial structures called kivas, with a small symbolic sipapu carved into the floor of every one of them, pointing to the original. It is not a metaphor to them. It is a geographical fact. They are still maintaining its memory as literal coordinates today, in the year you are watching this video. So now we have 4 independent traditions, 4 different continents, 4 different language families, the same feature. A tunnel through the earth, hybrid guardian beings, passage in darkness, emergence into the world of the living. You can call it coincidence one time. By the 4th occurrence, with one of those 4 still being maintained as literal geography by living people, the word coincidence has stopped being a useful explanation. The Scorpion Men are in the British Museum right now. The text of Tablet 9 has been translated by Andrew George and is publicly available. The 24-hour measurement is in the academic literature. The parallel traditions are documented in every comparative mythology textbook ever written. None of it is hidden. All of it is just sitting there, in plain sight, waiting for somebody to ask the obvious question. So, I want to ask you the question that I cannot stop asking myself. What kind of tunnel takes 24 hours to walk through, runs east-west underground, was considered too dangerous for any human to attempt before Gilgamesh, and was known to every major ancient civilization on Earth, under different names, in different languages, with the same core description? The text says, Gilgamesh walked through it alone and barely made it out before the sun overtook him. I keep reading. In that, and I keep thinking he walked through something real, something that existed, something that was old when the Sumerians were young, and nobody has seriously asked what it was. The question itself is treated as if asking it disqualifies you. If you have made it this far, you already know this is not the kind of thing that can be unread. So, tell me in the comments what you think Gilgamesh actually walked through. A real geological feature that has since collapsed or been buried. Something older than civilization that the ancients remembered and we forgot. Something else entirely that I have not even thought of. I read every comment. And if you want more videos like this one, where we read what the actual ancient texts actually say instead of repeating what everyone has already heard about them, hit subscribe right now, because the next video is about Tablet 11. Tablet 11 contains the Mesopotamian flood account, the one that predates Genesis by more than 1,000 years, and the one specific detail in it that nobody on YouTube is willing to address.